Hello everyone. I'm just going to take this time to give you a nice brief overview of the simulation, and I want to give you an idea of what you'll be doing, where you'll be competing, and who you'll be competing against, and a introduction into the software we'll be using for you to run your company. So let's get started. Um, this game, I prefer to call it a simulation rather than game, is going to give you an opportunity to do some certain things. For one, it's going to give you a broader exposure to different problems you'll face running a business. Now, this is a primarily private sector experience, but there can be a lot of public sector parallels that can be drawn here. Secondly, you are in charge of running your company, so you're going to be forced to take on a managerial role. Now, you're going to have teammates, and all of you are co-CEOs, equal in terms of your importance. But you must make the choices, the decisions. Thirdly, it's going to give you a test of how to apply the tools and techniques we're going over in this class. So when we talk about things like elasticity, we talk things about average total cost, we talk about demand curve shifting. All of these topics will be in this course. It's just not going to be presented to you in a very neat and tidy way like you see in the textbook. And lastly, it's going to ask you to come up with a strategy, a pragmatic action plan to deal with the situation that you find yourself. So, with that in mind, um, just as a manager in the real world, you will be held accountable for your performance. So, part of your grade in this class is going to be dependent upon your performance in this simulation. So, you have kind of like skin in the game, so to speak. Now, some of you have already noticed that I really like to summarize things, get to the bare essence of things. For example, what is economics? Study of choice. Well, if I wanted to kind of summarize what this simulation is all about, I've done it into three bullet points. One, in this simulation, you've got to come up with a strategy, a plan. Now, that plan may not be realistic. So therefore, the second aspect of this game is you've got to justify that strategy. Does this strategy have a good chance for success? For example, does your strategy match the profile, the customer profile where you'll be selling your shoes? In other words, does it have a good chance of success given the type of customer that you have? Given the type of competition that you're facing. In other words, choose your strategy, justify it. Now, once you've done those first two steps, now it's your job to implement your strategy, execution. How well do you execute it against another team that has a similar strategy? So choose, justify, implement. That's what this simulation is all about. Now, what I'm going to suggest for you is I'm going to suggest that you come up with 3-year plans. So we're going to be playing a total of 9 rounds, 9 years. So each round in this simulation is considered to be a year. Because because you've got to come up with a plan, and because this plan has got to anticipate changes in the market, you've got to come up with a set of strategies that take you 3 years out. In other words, you need to come up with a 3-year plan. And you've got to come up with three 3-year plans because there are 9 years. So when we play the first 3 years, have a plan of what you want to do for those first 3 years. After those first 3 years have been played, reassess. What sort of changes do you have to make to your existing strategy? And then map out the next 3 years. And then repeat this process for the final 3 years. So I want you to think in 3-year increments. 3 years in our simulation is considered to be the long run. So I want you to have 3 long run plans. Now, let me give you an idea of where you'll be competing. What I want to do is I want to break this up into product markets. Now, keep in mind from our class, we remember what we had here. We talked about how there's the product market. That's where you sell your product. And then there's the factors market. That's where you buy and sell your factors of production, things you need to produce your product. And you're going to be selling it to consumers. And you are the firm. So square, square. Now, what you're going to do is you're going to take your goods and services into the product market, your shoes, so to speak. Oops, sorry, shoes. Into the product market. And that's what we're talking in here, product market. And you've got three different product markets in this area. One product market is called branded. This is the shoe you sell to other stores. In other words, you're selling wholesale to a bunch of different stores, and they're going to be selling your product to the final customer. So think about if you're Nike and you're going to sell a bunch of shoes to Macy's or Bloomingdale's or Nordstrom Rack, okay? This is your largest market. Now, excuse me. There's another market called private label. In this market, you produce the shoe, but some other company puts their label on it. Think of Kirkland brands in Costco. Kirkland is Costco's brand, but Costco doesn't produce those products. Some other company produces it, and then Costco puts their Kirkland brand label on it. That's what you're going to be doing here. You have a choice, you have a chance to dedicate some of your production to the private label market. And then finally, you could sell directly to the consumer. Keep in mind, this market and this market, these are wholesale markets. You're producing it, but somebody else is selling it to the final consumer. Here, you could sell directly to the consumer. Again, think of Nike, who has their own website, and you could buy directly from the firm. So these are three different markets that are considered to be the product markets. Okay. Now, those three different product markets are going to be operating in four different regions. One is North America, two is what we call Latin America, three is called Europe, Africa, and then four, Asia. So there is a branded, private label, and internet market in North America. There is a branded, private label, and internet market in South America, and so on. So, three different product markets in four different geographic regions. Now, again, you don't have to sell in any one geographic region. You could be in all four, or you could be only in one. But of course, the more markets you are in, geographic regions, the more customers you have access to. And then finally, another way of looking at it is you could break down your markets into pricing segments. And I'll make this very easy for you. You could break it down to high, middle, and low price. So there's a high-end market in North America, there's a mid-market, and there's a low market in terms of pricing. Now, when you think of this, um, we don't, when you look at the total North American market, it's never separated into equal parts, meaning a third of the market is high end, a third of the market is mid price, and a third of the market is low price. No, the bulk of your shares go to the lowest pricing segment. So here's a nice little graphic here. Look at this. Roughly around half to three quarters of the market is going to be low end. In other words, you in each market, you could expect 55% to 75% of market share go to the Walmarts of that region. And in mid-price, 15 to 25% of the total market would go to the mid-pricing segment. And then finally, 5 to 10 would go to the high-end market. Now, keep in mind, a lot of people gravitate towards this because they look at these numbers, they go, oh, you get the most of the sales. But keep in mind, there's much higher profit margin in this market. So yes, you sell more here, but there's higher profit margin here. Which one is the best? Well, that could depend upon the type of customers you typically find in a region. What if you have a region that's very price sensitive or price elastic? Well, the most successful market will probably be the low price. The most successful strategy, pricing strategy, will be low price. But there's going to be another market that could be very, very high end, very price inelastic. Well, then the high end market can work for you there. So it all depends. So let's look at your screens here. Now, this is the first screen that you see, but these are going to be all of your departments. Your sales forecast department, your plant upgrade department, your branded production department, and so on. Think of each one of these links as a different department. Let's look at your sales forecast department. And what we see here is we see that we've got the 4 geographic regions here: North America, Europe, Asia, and Latin America. And this is for the branded market. Here we have the internet market right here. Sorry. This is the internet market. And so let's focus our attention on the branded market, and specifically, let's focus our attention to North America. Well, first of all, let me just go over to here, and so take a look at this for a second. See this? See all? Look at all of these items right here. What do these look like to you? These are all of the determinants of demand. Sorry, come on, get out of there. These are all the determinants of demand for your product. In other words, your customers care about price, your customers care about quality rating, SQ rating, how many models, advertising, rebates, retail outlets. These are your determinants of demand. Remember our talk about the supply curve and demand curve? Look over here. So if I draw a price quantity, here's your supply curve, here's your demand curve. And this is basically going to tell you how your customers react to a change in price and how suppliers react to a change in price. But remember, these curves don't move if all of the other determinants of demand, other than price, remain constant. If those determinants of demand change, the demand curve shifts. For example, if you increase the style quality of your shoe, it's going to shift your demand curve over to the right. So in other words, all of these right here, let me show you, right here, are demand shifters, right? When this one changes, you move along the curve, right? This is the price of your product. So there should be some parallels that you get from this. And let me just focus on there. Here are all of your determinants right here. Of course, the price of your product matters, but all of these others are those frozen determinants that will shift your demand curve to the left or to the right for your product in each geographic region. So let's look at this. Let me focus on this for a second. Again, what you see here is let's look at North America. On on the right hand side, this is your product right here, and it shows all of the different measurements for each of the different determinants of demand. Over here, this is the industry average for all of the determinants in that particular region. So your demand depends upon your determinants of demand and how it relates to the average in each geographic market. So let me do a little recap here. You're going to be competing in the 3 different product markets: branded, private label, and internet. And you're going to be also competing in 4 different geographic regions: North America, Latin America, Europe, and Asia. And in all 4 geographic regions, there are going to be 3 different, broadly speaking, pricing segments: high, medium, and low. So this kind of gives you a broad overview of what you'll be seeing in this course. And how are you going to be scored? Well, you're going to be scored on five different measurements. One, your company's growth in earnings per share. That's 20% of your score. And then your growth in your return on equity. That is 20%. Your company's credit rating, your company's stock price, and finally, your company's image rating. Now, of course, some of you could be saying, hey, Martin, I don't know anything about return on equity or earnings per share. Well, this is your opportunity to find out. The simulation gives you lots of information on what these terms mean and how do you make sense of it. So that's a nice introduction to the whole simulation. Of course, we're going to be having training training seminars and practice rounds. So you will get to know this simulation much more in depth very soon. But keep in mind, everybody's starting off equally blind when it comes to the simulation. So this is a race for clarity, a race for understanding. So the simulation gives you lots of material, videos and help screens to make sense of how the simulation works. The teams that work the team that works best together in terms of figuring out how this all works is the team that's going to have a uh, competitive advantage that's very difficult to overcome. So please keep that in mind. That's all for now.